How did you first get into personal development?
It's been a long, long journey. I remember when I was in middle school, one of my classmates said she was going to be a psychologist when she grew up. And I said, "What's a psychologist?" And she explained to me that it was someone who learned all about people and what makes people work. And I was fascinated. And at the time, you can all imagine middle school, the thing I wanted most was to be popular and to have friends and, crushes on boys and those kinds of things. And so I got really curious about what is it that makes people tick, right? What would make someone like me more or less if I want to be liked, right? And have a friend. So I just studied. I just started studying psychology and I loved it. And over time it evolved, but I always loved it. I always loved it because it always explained for me what was really going on. It's like that was the knowledge that gave me the power to change relationships, right? Or to figure out what was in the way.
I love that you had such curiosity about psychology. So, another question for you, kind of going back to your earlier life. How did your early curiosity turn into a way of living?
I think in that initial time, in middle school and in high school, when I started getting curious, it started working. Right. So I noticed a really little thing. So I was super insecure and needy, and I was really clingy in relationships, and people would sort of move the other way because I was a little overwhelming in my neediness. And what I learned is if I pretended I didn't care too much, then people would come towards me more. They'd be more interested. If I started, "When are you coming over to my house? Yeah, do you want to do this? Do you want to do this?" And they're like, "Oh, no, 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 no." But if I'm going, well, I could get together, and then they would come towards me. That was like my first little inclination. So I started practicing that, and it was how I sort of developed one of my first best friend relationships. And it felt so good to have a best friend. And I was like, oh, wow, this really works. And I just started reapplying it to one hurdle after another. So when I was in college and I was trying to get a part time job and I was petrified to interview, I was embarrassed and awkward. And I think I went to a job interview and they didn't hire me. And I thought, I've got to work on this. But I started looking inside, like, what is it that I can do to improve myself? To, you know, the work is inside and then the outside world can change. And that's exactly what happened. So I don't know I don't remember now what I worked on, probably skill building, confidence, whatever, but I figured out a way of being in job interviews that started working. And so that was a big hurdle. And then they were part-time jobs, but it seemed like every job interview I went on, I got hired. And so I got a lot of confidence in that. And it was just one thing after another. And I started believing that whatever I wanted in the world, I could create just by looking inward and figuring out how I was getting in my own way. And so, I grew up in Michigan. I didn't like the weather there. I moved out to California. I created a life for myself in a house with palm trees outside because that's what I wanted, near an ocean, but also near universities. So, I mean, I just kept creating what I wanted when I was in business. When we worked together, I got to a point where I wanted to be able to manage my time. I was going to be a parent. I decided, well, I'm just going to start my own company. I'm not going to work for this big tech company anymore because I can't be two places at once. I can't bring my child to school. I have to have the autonomy to be able to do something and also be a parent. So I did that. And so it was just one thing after another. And it always worked. It just kept working. So that's sort of my philosophy of life. And it also is kind of the philosophy I use with my clients as well. There's always something inside that you can resolve that will open the path.
Thank you. Bye now.
Bye bye.